Welcome to Ukraine, with your host, Pastor Bert.
Hello, friends. In our last episode, Putin the Killer in the Kremlin, we presented physical evidence that Vladimir Putin, a former KGB secret agent, then first Yeltsin's chief of staff and later as Yeltsin's last prime minister, was a double agent who worked daily to weaken, poison, if not kill Yeltsin. Putin continued to feed Yeltsin alcohol daily. Yeltsin, who suffered heart disease, many heart attacks, high blood pressure, and bouts of pneumonia, was weakened, sickened, and hospitalized numerous times because of the alcohol pushed on him by Putin at diplomatic and governmental meetings, using Yeltsin as the leader, the toastmaster. Weakened, frail, with his economic policies under attack for being capitalism, bringing it to Russia, Yeltsin resigned. Yeltsin's wife describes how her husband briefed her of his intent to resign the presidency of Russia. Here, let us listen to Niana Yeltsin, President Yeltsin's wife for 52 years and First Lady of Russia for 8 years, as she describes in 2017 for the BBC the resignation of her husband Boris from the Russian presidency.
Для Бориса Николаевича свобода – это было не просто слово «свобода».
In the heady days of 1990 and early 1991, he was the adored leader of a protest movement unknown since the Bolshevik Revolution.
Власть для него как власть никогда не была нужна. Он хотел сделать так, чтобы Россия стала лучше, безусловно. Было очень тяжело, безусловно, работать. Просто время было такое. Вот мы вдруг оказались в стране, которая для экономики абсолютно разрушена. Но если бы еще у нас в то время не было такой оппозиции, тогда, наверное, легче было бы работать. С них надо спросить. А я считаю, что президент сделал все правильно.
But remarkably, Boris Yeltsin clung on to defeat the communists and win a second term in office. But there was a price to be paid. His health collapsed.
И Борис Николаевич должен был записывать новогодние поздравления. Вот как это все помню, как будто бы это было вчера. Прошло уже довольно много лет. Повернулся и говорит: Наина, я подаю в отставку. Будет мое телеобращение, смотри телевизор. Господи, какое счастье! Сейчас этот груз ответственности с его плеч уже упадет, и он будет принадлежать семье. И какое-то счастье, что мы можем спокойно отдохнуть, что не будет этих ночных звонков. И он, ну все, я должен идти, а потом с какой-то улыбкой мне говорит: ты же помнешь в нее костюм, потому что я висела у него буквально на шее.
I want to ask for your forgiveness, because many of our dreams did not come to pass, because what had seemed simple turned out to be terribly hard. I ask forgiveness for not fulfilling some of the hopes of the people who believed that we could in one swoop, in one leap, jump from the grey, stagnant, totalitarian past into the radiant, wealthy and civilized future. I am leaving. I have done everything I can.
Yeltsin was not merely facing a rebellion from his former power base, Russian Parliament, in the form of the Communist Party and anti-Yeltsin force, but more dangerous from Prime Minister Putin, who schemed and plotted to replace Yeltsin. Keep in mind that although Putin publicly was Yeltsin's prime minister, still he had remained a member of the Communist Party and, as a KGB double agent, working daily to diminish Yeltsin. Putin's fix was in. Putin worked to deal with Yeltsin. Yeltsin was to resign, and then Putin would present TV address all of Russia. introducing himself as the new temporary president. Putin's address had 8 major parts. Today, we will analyze the first of those 8 major parts, making up Putin's first TV address to the nation as president.
Дорогие друзья, сегодня, в новогоднюю ночь, я, как и вы, с родными и друзьями, собирался выслушать слова приветствия президента России Бориса Николаевича Ельцина. Но вышло иначе. Сегодня, 31 декабря 1999 года, первый президент России принял решение уйти в отставку.
Putin starts his TV address by lying to his nation. Oh, if Putin knew nothing of Yeltsin's intended resignation, how is it that he had his acceptance speech as new Russian president written, practiced, and delivered to the nation? A very unconvincing lie. But lying is the life Putin knew as a KGB double agent. Remember, in part 1 of the series Putin, the Killer in the Kremlin, we revealed that Putin's backers in the FSB, the renamed KGB, along with his allies, Russian parliament, had 2 different sets of charges to impeach Yeltsin from office. 1. Corruption charges against Yeltsin and his family members making bribes, and 2. Removal from office for alcohol addiction, involving long periods of time where Yeltsin was impaired or could not remember what he had agreed to while intoxicated, thereby creating a security breach sufficient to legally justify removal of his top-secret clearance necessary for a president of Russia to remain in office. The evidence on the first charge against Yeltsin was weak and superficial, but the evidence of continued alcoholic addiction, drunkenness was deep and overwhelming because Prime Minister Putin, by providing Yeltsin alcohol for multiple government toasts for years, every day while Yeltsin was in office. Both charges, if proved, meant imprisonment, not merely for Yeltsin, but for his family members as well. Yeltsin, by the day he resigned, was a beaten man. His health had been so compromised by Putin's daily alcohol poisoning that he had nothing left to fight off his adversaries, including Putin. Putin met Yeltsin for his daily briefing. Putin reported that Yeltsin's enemies were closing in. Yeltsin, seeing probable defeat, asked Putin for immunity in exchange for the president. Putin agreed and presented an immunity deal Putin already had written out in general terms, quoted from what would be Putin's first presidential decree. Yeltsin and his family were to be immune from, quote, prosecution, arrest, bodily search, and interrogation. Immunity was to be extended to his, quote, place of residence, his offices, if he continued to work, his vehicles, his means of communication, his baggage, and his correspondence. Beyond immunity from criminal or administrative institutionalization, Putin further offered a guarantee to continue paying Yeltsin his government salary, quote, housing to provide Yeltsin and members of his family salary and staff, unquote. A retirement pact, let's call it for what it was, a golden parrot in exchange for the presidency. Putin wanted the presidency and he was prepared to give Yeltsin his immunity off-ramp that would protect him and his family for life. Be assured, Yeltsin would have never resigned without this immunity deal agreed to in advance. Both parties, Yeltsin and Putin, agreed to the terms in the immunity deal prior to Yeltsin's resignation. As long as his wife and children were safe, Yeltsin was ready to resign. Yeltsin felt confident that his policy reform legacy would remain safe by having his own man, Putin, his very own prime minister, taking over the presidency. Unfortunately, Yeltsin had no idea that Putin was actually a double agent sworn to destroy everything Yeltsin had worked for. Putin's own objective was to reverse every one of Yeltsin's reforms, including, in the end, the democratic reforms Yeltsin had so dedicated his life to. Putin himself predicted Russia's future under his leadership.
Как это не печально и как это, может быть, не страшно звучит, на мой взгляд, в нашей стране поворот к тоталитаризму на какой-то период времени возможен.
Power corrupts, and power absolutely corrupts. We will continue this analysis in the next episode. Be sure not to miss it. Putin has just stolen the presidency of Russia, and democracy there is thus to be disposed of by the new emerging tyrant. Friends, thank you for visiting Welcome to Ukraine, this series, How to Stop Putin and His Nuclear War. Putin's like a puzzle. You can't begin to understand what Putin is doing unless you lay down and examine every piece of the puzzle one piece at a time. Do this enough, and you will not only empower yourself, but all of humanity by learning of the threat and the risk to all human life. How to defeat Putin and to stop its nuclear war to save all our lives. Be sure and come back tomorrow for the next installment, for the next step also in solving this hidden puzzle. Because this issue is literally life and death for our species. Lives are at stake. Whose? Well, all of ours as well as yours. We must stand against this extinction of all mankind. We must not go quietly into the night. We must bring awareness to as many of our kind to encourage more opposition to Putin's nuclear war. Please help us to help you. Please visit us also on our parent site, Free Ukraine Gives. Remember, beloved, God loves you, so do I. Until the next time, this is your host, Pastor Bert, saying goodbye, friends.